the manufacturing of the straw man. So let's just review. When we began this, we started with the famous watchtowers and how they got here and what it really is. Simon Rodea had only one helper, who was Aborigine himself, on the original lot, which I'll show you later, on Wilmington and 109th. But anyway, he built these towers with one helper from the original lot over there. And inside this portion of it is a playground for children. And this is an historic rotunda right here on the ground, which I'm gonna read from so I can review parts 1 and 2. Give me a moment and I'm gonna go over there and talk about the historic rotunda, which the college professors all got together and wrote because they wanted to be as accurate as they possibly could be in writing about the history of the state of California. So pardon me as I go to it and begin at the beginning of the historic rotunda so I can review this for the people. Okay, here we are. So it reads, from 1 AD to 1542, it says, the Tongva Brielianos, culturally the Shoshonian background, lived in the Los Angeles area for over 1,000 years before the arrival of Europeans. So they're clearly stating that the Europeans discovered something in their narrative because they're controlling the narrative, and most of them are of European descent. But it skips all the way to 1542 and it says, I hope you can see it there. In 1542, the Spanish explorer Juan Cabrillo expedition, the first Europeans to have contact with the Native Americans in Southern California. Now, they're using language that they didn't use in 1492. And this is a hijacked language. This is, the word native was not even in the vocabulary of the human words, the human etymology at that time. The words black, white, native, and African American did not come into the vocabulary until the 1830s. And that was with the Know Nothing Party that Dane Calloway so articulately told us in his videos. Then it skips to 1579, where it says, Sir Francis Drake, the Englishman, lands near San Quentin Bay, that's up in the Bay Area, right next to San Francisco Bay, and he said he claims California for England, and then a brass plate was found in the 1936 time, names the region New Albion. Now that's a wonderful name because that's what they called my great-great-grandfather, 4th generation, George, and his wife Anna Rosa Patillo Parham. They called them Albions, but he was the only Albion or mulatto. And so that's a whole race that was out here in California, or part of an ethnicity that was trying to be defined by their characteristics, you know, by their human characteristics. And we see that in the scriptures when Enoch was trying to describe his grandson, Noah. In other words, Noah was the first albino, and so they named that an entire tribe. So you're getting close to seeing how that if I can prove this hijack, I can prove that by using misnomer language and colorful language, they really took our culture and ethnicity from us in order that they could sabotage us in the future. And so they had to have a lot of help from Satan to do this. And I'm going to talk about later on a 3D time loop that they hijacked of the Earth's timeline by covering up pyramids, covering up mounds, covering up historical architectural sites, anthropological evidence that proves that we were here and that we were the American Indians and not natives. When they said a Native American, they wouldn't even describe the natives. Then it says 1602. It skips up from 1579 to 1602. And it says, the Sebastian Viscano expedition, the second European contact with the Southern California Indians. So it at least calls us Indians finally. And just to put in another true fact is that Crayola crayons, which came out in the 1900s with their brand, they changed one color 3 times in the history of Crayola crayons. And they named one chestnut, named 2 was Indian red, and I forgot the name 3 was dark penny. Yes, dark penny. And so those were the 3 different names they called the same color. But Sebastian Viscano expedition was the second European contact with the Southern California Indians, so at least they are calling us indigenous through the word Indians. Now remember, all the professors got together and wrote this rotunda, this so-called historic rotunda, which is supposed to be as accurate as they possibly can make it from their learning and knowledge and wisdom. Now, in 1769, Spain claims California and establishes this region as Alta California, and Don Gaspar de Portolos, the Don Gaspar de Portolos exploration is the first recorded land expedition of what they titled Alta California of the Spanish. So here it is, the Spanish took over the British area because the British evidently didn't have an army strong enough to compete or fight with the Spanish until later on. Now this is 1769. So the major portion of the video for today, which is be part 3, is from 1602 to 1769, which is 167 years that they had that was silent in the modern era. Because really, from 1492 all the way till 1717, not only was California an island off the mainland until 1717, California was isolated and full of one ethnicity, not colorization or not colorism, but one ethnicity as far as their cultural standing with one another. Then it goes on to say that Mission San Gabriel is established. The name of Gabrielino Indian is used to describe the Indians living in the Los Angeles area at the time of Spanish colonization. Now, it was Spanish colonization, so the major language and culture was Spanish, but that does not describe the melanation of the people. In other words, California's first governor was Pio Pico. We have a street named after Pio Pico, and Pio Pico was a dark-skinned man such as myself. So he's full of melanin. A very pigmented Indian who was the first governor and founding governor of California in 1871, I think California was established. So Pio Pico was the governor for about 12 to 20 years of California, 100 years after this, 1771. Because in 1871, California was founded. So all the people were of one ethnicity in the state of California because the British were not the discoverers of California. We learned in 1602. We learned that the Spanish had taken over the territory because the British had not established an army that rugged yet to go ahead and start claiming dominion over the land through manifest destiny. So the Gabrielino Indians, now these Indians, it says, living in the Los Angeles area at the time of Spanish colonization was this name, Gabrielino Indians. Gabrielino Indians. Remember that. Now, 1781. This is a very important date right here. The first Mexican. Now, look at it, make the difference and distinction between Mexican settlers and Spanish settlers. Just because Mexicans speak Spanish, it only means that they're colonized. That's a colonized language. English and Spanish are the two most devastating colonization languages on the face of the earth, next to Portuguese and then next to French. But remember, English and Spanish are the great colonization languages where they colonized the most people. So the Mexican settlers in Pueblos de Los Angeles, which is an outpost still named downtown, Pueblos de Los Angeles, which was the founding invaders' name for those recruited from Sinaloa, Mexico by Governor Felipe de Neve. Now, Governor Felipe de Neve was before Pio Pico, but he was in Mexico talking this stuff before the war came, which we'll read about later on. So I just want to review this. The Governor Felipe de Neve of the 44 Los Pobladores, 26 are of African descent. Now, Biddy Mason and the 44 people that started the city of Los Angeles were not from Africa. You understand, the Los Angeles city, or the Pueblos de Los Angeles, the Pueblo de Los Angeles is under the popes or the under-popes, or what you call the bishops, that gave them the charter to start the county of Los Angeles. And Biddy Mason and these 44 people were not African. So these professors are trying to deceive people and tell you that they're African, and they're not. So I'm reading from their historic rotunda now. These are all the professors of the Cal States got together and wrote this. And they're expecting us to follow it and abide by it when all our evidence proves otherwise. So those 44 pueblos, Los Pobladores, and 26 are African descent and mixed ancestry. I wonder what they mixed with. They're sure not mixed with African. They're sure mixed with the indigenous blood of everybody that was here. Established under Spanish rule, the Pueblo is culturally Mexican. 1791, an area called the Los Angeles District extends from Mission San Fernando to San Juan Capistrano Mission, way at the end of Orange County before you go into San Clemente and San Diego counties. Yes. So it stretches all the way to Orange County. From San Juan Capistrano Mission all the way up to San Fernando Mission. That is the area that is called the District of Los Angeles, or Pueblos de Los Angeles, by the San Franciscan Fathers. So San Fernando is established by the San Francisco Fathers, but the area called Los Angeles was founded by these 44 fully melanated, what they want to call African Americans today, which is another hijack. Rancho La Tejada. In 1920, it reads Rancho La Tejada. In 1820, Spanish settler Anastasio Avila is granted 3,599 acres by the Spanish government. His family receives the title to the rancho in 1873. It's kind of scratched off. So they received this charter, or they received the title, which is a deed, to the acres in 1873, and the boundary lines of the property are close to those of present-day Watts. So the 3,599 acres was designated for Watts section of Los Angeles in 1873. Mexico in 1821 receives its independence from Spain and rules the entire Alta California region. So that's the ultimate Alta California until 1846, which is the time of the start of the Spanish-American War with Pancho Villa and Navata and those other great fighters. Here it is, 1832. Pio Pico, of African Mexican parentage, becomes Mexican governor of California for a few months, and then again from 1845 to 46. I told you Pio Pico was governor for 12 to 20 years. And so that accounts for it right there. Then in 1834, the 21 missions established by Spanish Franciscan monks throughout Alta California are secularized for foreign settlers, primarily Americans, begin to enter California holding Mexican land grants. So, in other words, I'm trying to explain to you, who were the people prior to these people? Who were the people prior to these folks that were in California? And I'm telling you, they were the Aborigine, because California was an island up until 1817, and I'll prove that to you later in this video. 1844, the population of the Los Angeles district is comprised of 1,841 Mexican colonials and 1,200 Native Americans. Now, I'm still wanting y'all to see the hijack of this word native. We need to continue to tell them to not use the word native, not use the word black, white, or African American when these historic rotundas are being discussed, when historic information is supposed to be on the table. when truth is supposed to be on the table. Because the word native was not in the U.S. vocabulary, at least until the 1860s. It was mentioned in the 1830s, but it wasn't in there until the natives began to have a little power in Congress with the Know Nothing Party. That was called the Native Party. 1848, California becomes a U.S. territory following the Mexican War and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Now, we're getting into close to the gold rush, where so many pale-faced, quote-unquote, Americans rushed to the region of California because they thought for sure they would find gold and get rich and be rich for the rest of their lives.